Konnichiwa, everybody. Welcome back. Little quick video. Obviously, thumbnail gives you a clue to what it's about. Sega games on the Nintendo Famicom, or NES, if you like. A while back, as you know, if you've been paying attention, I love collecting Famicom games. And somebody put the idea in my head. It might have been Craig, possibly. But anyway, so somebody put the idea in my head. It'd be quite cool to get the Sega games that were on the Famicom, like the little subset, because there aren't many. And I looked into it, and I thought, yeah, that's quite achievable, and I'd quite like to do that. It'd be a nice little set, because you really, you know, at the time of the like 8-bit and 16-bit consoles, there was no crossover between Sega and Nintendo, who were the dominant players, obviously, at the time. You know, you never got Nintendo games on a Sega system, and you never got Sega games on a Nintendo system. But there were a few on the 8-bit Famicom, or NES. So that's what this video is about. I'm just going to quickly run through them because I've now acquired a full set of them. So what I'll try and do is I'll show the game, and then I'll try and put a bit of footage up here of, you know, each game running, and I'll try and put a comparison between the NES version and the Master System version, so you can sort of compare the two, because you can only compare the, you know, two 8-bit formats. Some of these games are on 16-bit consoles, which obviously look better. But, you know, you can only compare a Famicom game to another 8-bit console. There's obviously computers, but I'm talking about consoles specifically. Anyway, enough babbling. The first one we've got is Fantasy Zone. Now, as you can see, this on the Famicom was put out by Sunsoft. To be honest, I'm not sure if any of these came out in North America or Europe. I don't know. Let me know if they did. I've not seen them, but they may well have done. I'm not big up on the NES. So here we've got Fantasy Zone by Sunsoft. A nice, well, it would have been a white cartridge. It's kind of cream now. I assume it would have been white. But yeah, now, I never liked Fantasy Zone back in the day, but I've really quite got to like it now, since the Master System Challenge, funnily enough. This isn't bad on the Famicom, if I'm honest. The colours are a lot more garish than the Master System version. You typically associate the Famicom with more muted colour palette, much like the Commodore 64 compared with the Spectrum kind of scenario. This is quite bright colours, but they are very garish on the Famicom. That said, it plays a good game of Fantasy Zone, and I do think it's really rather good. It's not as good as the Master System. That version is beautifully colourful, plays amazing. I mean, that's the version of the two that's by far the best in my opinion. But it's good on the Famicom. It's still a good game. Next up, of course, we've got Fantasy Zone 2, again made by Sunsoft on the Famicom. It's more of the same, really. However, the colour palette on Fantasy Zone 2 on the Famicom is much more muted, as you might expect. The colours are a lot less bright, but they're not as garish and they're not as harsh on the eye. And again, it plays a really good game, a Fantasy Zone, but it does suffer with a bit of slowdown. It's not too bad. It's perfectly playable, and it is, as I say, a good game, a Fantasy Zone 2. Again, not a patch on the Master System version. That looks sensational, as you'll see from the screenshots, all being well. You know, no two ways about it, the Master System version is by far the superior. But it is yet another good playable Sega game on the Famicom. If that was your only option at the time, you know, it was a decent version. Right, next up, another Sunsoft game on the Famicom. We've got Afterburner. Another nice white cartridge with a colour label on the back. Not too many got those that I've got anyway. This is much a similar story. Doesn't play a bad game of Afterburner, to be honest. It's really quite good, much like the two Fantasy Zone games. You know, you can tell it's Afterburner. It looks like Afterburner. It plays nicely. Graphics aren't too bad. They're not as good as the Master System. Again, the colour's not as good as the Master System. The sprites are smaller. But it does play a decent game. It's just, again, just like the first two, it's not as good as the Master System version. So far, we've had 3 games which are competent on the Famicom, and if that was your only console at the time, that would have been great ways to play all of those games, to be honest. They're all good fun to play, and I've enjoyed playing what I have of them on the Famicom since, even though I've got the Master System versions. But as you can see from all the comparisons, Fantasy Zone 2 and Afterburner, for my money, the Master System is by far the better version, as you might expect, being made by Sega on their own console. You know, you'd expect it to be better. But the Famicom did more than adequate ports, I'd say. Right, next up, we've got Space Harrier. This is on a black cartridge, as you can see. Now, this one isn't a Sunsoft game. I don't actually know who did this. But anyway, Space Harrier on the Master System. Sorry, on the Famicom. I'll put the 2 versions up again. Now, this, I think, is really quite good in many ways on the Famicom. Again, I would say it not suffers, but it has smaller sprites, like Afterburner does rather. But again, it plays really well, and it's a really good version of Space Harrier. My criticism of this is it's brutally hard. The enemy fire moves that fast, you can't react. Well, I certainly can't react fast enough to get out of the way before it hits you and kills you. The Master System version is much more forgiving. And you know, the bullets move quite a lot slower than they do on this. They just like appear out of nowhere and hit you almost. It's brutal. But that aside, it is really good. And it was much better than I was expecting, to be honest. That's not the easiest game to get on the Famicom, at least not here. I'm not, obviously, probably more common in Japan. But the 2 Fantasy Zone games and Afterburner are fairly easy to get here. I had trouble with this. Aren't many of these about, so I was chuffed to get it. Like I say, I wasn't expecting a lot, but I was pleasantly surprised. Whether practice would improve the bullet situation, I don't know, but aside from that, it is really good. Right, the next one, actually, I will say there's 6 altogether on the Famicom Sega games. There is a 7th one, Shinobi, but that didn't come out on the Famicom, so I've not got that because I don't collect NES type carts. So yeah, it was a 10-gen game in America on the NES Shinobi. I'll put some footage up here again, showing the NES version and the Master System version. Again, it's a very similar story again, really, to the 2 Fantasy Zone games. Shinobi on the NES looks and plays a decent version of Shinobi, but graphically it's not in the same league as the Master System version. which for me it's a great game on the Master System, Shinobi. You can tell you're playing Shinobi on the NES, but it's like a poor shadow in comparison, in my opinion. But again, if that was your only option, it was Shinobi anyway, you know. But shame it never come out on the Famicom, because I'd love to have added that to the set, really. But you know, it is what it is. I'm assuming Tengen's probably an American company, and that's why it never got a Famicom release. Anyway, 2 more to go. Now this, much like Space Harrier, is quite difficult to get in this country. And we've got a nice yellow cartridge, and this time, can you tell what it is yet? It's Altered Beast. Asmic, I think, did this one on the Famicom. Quite tricky to get, like I said. I just dropped lucky, and there was one on eBay, I think, when I've had a safe search for it for ages, and one popped up and I bought it straight away because it was actually a good price as well. But yeah, this gets a lot of flack. If I read reviews before I bought it, and I wasn't expecting much. It's kind of a love-hate game, isn't it, Altered Beast? Some people seem to like it, which I do, and other people think it's awful. But this Famicom version I'd read was terrible. You know, even by Altered Beast standards, if it's not your cup of tea. I've got to say, I don't think it's too bad. It looks awful, don't get me wrong, it looks terrible. But it plays really half decent, in my opinion. In contrast, the Master System version looks good. You know, it's not as good as the Mega Drive, obviously, but it does look quite good, the Master System. But it plays like an absolute dog, in my opinion. It's like you're playing with the old-fashioned slow motion trigger on your control pad. It's awful. This plays really well. The graphics again are really, really small in comparison, much like Afterburner and Space Harrier. But it plays great. Honestly, this is not a bad game. I was really quite surprised. I was expecting just, you know, one of the most awful games on the Famicom I'd ever played, but it was far from that. Really not bad at all. That brings me to the last one. Now this, I would say, is probably, along with Altered Beast, the hardest one to find on the Famicom, in this country at least. I'd say this is probably the hardest one to find. I had to import this from Japan. Couldn't find it on UK eBay. Nice black cartridge. I don't know who does it. Oh, this is a Sunsoft game as well, apparently. Not on a Sunsoft cart though. But this is Alien Syndrome. Now, by far and away, of all these Sega conversions, this is the best one on the Famicom. This is really, really good. And in my opinion, this is far better than the Master System version. This is a really, really good game. Far better than the Master System, like I say. Not such infuriating enemies that just appear out of nowhere and kill you randomly. Haven't got those stupid firing eye things. The screen actually scrolls rather than flicks like the Master System version. Graphics are nice. Plays great. Sounds good. Honestly, that is a great game. And you know, it trounces on the Master System version, in my opinion. Far superior. Awesome game. And that's the entirety of the Sega cartridges on the Nintendo Famicom. I just thought that would make an interesting little video. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Be great to hear from you. But that's it really. I just thought I'm glad to have completed the subset. A nice easy one as things go. 6 cartridges, you can't get much smaller than that, can you? But I'm delighted to have it. But thanks for watching anyway. Hope to see you soon. And sayonara.